subscribers have you got?
I've got 10,000 subscribers. I'd like to say a big thank you. I have 10,000 subscribers. I know a lot of you have been there almost from the beginning. You've had to put up with a lot of mattresses, as well as a lot of speakers, and a lot of other things along the way. I've done it without gimmicks. You'll never get gimmicks on my channel. And 10,000 subscribers, it's down to you, because you are my subscribers. Most of you, I hope. The continuing story of the Motion Boom. So my EQ is beginning to evolve. I know most of you have probably put your 150 Hz slider higher than I've got my slider. And it'll probably get there in the end, guys. But right now, you know, get my ears attuned to it. I'm quite happy with the tuning. I find if I push the slider, the 150 Hz slider up, well, it does mess with the vocals. It does smother the vocals a little bit and hide some of the lower bass. I can understand a lot of you like a punchy sound. All you JBL Xtreme 1, Xtreme 2 fans, you prefer the punchy sound over deeper bass. And of course, stick the 150 Hz slider up. Some of you seem to think there's something magical. I'm not saying my EQ settings are the settings you. I'm saying that's what I'm using that I like. There's nothing magical. You buy a speaker, you got to like the speaker. Whatever EQ you end up with is fine. Don't let anybody tell you it needs to be this, that, or the other. It needs to be flat or it needs to be bass heavy. You've just got to like it at the end of the day. Now, the Motion Boom. Revisited today because as I said, EQ is evolving, because I want to revisit now with the new EQ against the JBL extremely priced 3. Extremely priced £280 for an SBC codec. We will not stop reminding JBL what they've done to us. SBC codec and an app that has no user EQ after all these years. JBL with all their might. Okay, we get all the colours of the rainbow, not just black as we do with the Motion Boom, but come on JBL, I know you can do better. £280, and that is why I'm sticking in the Minirig, which we haven't seen for a little while, 1.1 system. £140, £140, that's the same price as the JBL Xtreme 3. I could have had a pair of just the Mark 3s, again, £280. I prefer the 1.1, because it makes the sound a bit warmer. I prefer it that way, and also because I'm not messing with setting up in stereo. The stereo does seem to work mostly now with the Minirig. For a long time, it was quite a hassle. There have been multiple updates addressing that, but still, if I don't want to deal with any Bluetooth pairing in stereo, and by the way, when it works, you don't have to, because when you turn them both on, they should be stereo locked, but it's not 100% so, for two reasons. A, no messing with pairing, and B, because I prefer the warmer sound in a 1.1 rather than 2.0, and because you keep, a lot of you, seems to be a resurgence in this LG Xboom Go PN7, maybe because it's come down in price. Checking this morning, £120, that's a stonking value again for this speaker. Came out, I think I paid, it was something like £160, £170 when the speaker came out. You're asking me about it again. It wasn't saying that much interest when I first did the video, but I'm sticking it in again because still the cheapest. This morning when I checked, £70. £70 for the Motion Boom, for this little boombox marble. £70. It's the cheapest, no matter what deal you get at the moment. Well, as long as you get the deal, because it was 90 quid on Amazon not long ago. 70 quid this morning when I checked. On offer, and you're always getting these sporadic offers with Soundcore. So I thought this comparison would be interesting. Just a quick overview of the speakers. As I said, 280 quid for the bundle, 280 quid for your SBC codec on the JBL Xtreme price 3. It's 100, as I said, 120, £70. And in terms of batteries, kind of similar. I believe 29 watt hours, 29 watt hours. But I'm trying to confirm that with Minirigs themselves. 29 watt hours for the PN7, 36 watt hours on the JBL Xtreme 3, and 37 watt hours, the biggest capacity on paper, for the Motion Boom. Now, I have moved to watt hours rather than, you know, it's 3.7, it's 7.4 volts, because you don't know really what's going on. At the end of the day, there's no big difference in battery technology. The difference between battery life on these speakers is how loud does it go and how much bass does it retain for that volume, because the more bass it retains, the less battery life you'll get, because it takes more power to drive that lower end. So it's very easy to have more battery life, and say you've got 24-hour battery life if you literally have no bass at all. And then you get a speaker like the Motion Boom, which doesn't drop its bass at all. By comparison, it will have less battery life. Yeah, but because there's no free lunches here, you're getting the more volume, more bass. And that's why I've stopped doing these headline marketing features about battery life and stuff like that. I'm telling you what battery capacity there is in there. And the battery life you get at the end of the day will be how those batteries are configured, how loud it goes, how much bass you're going to get. I'm going to say aptX. Yeah, brilliant. Hi-fi credentials on the Minirig. We already know SBC. They're giving it to us again. Or doing it to us again. And I won't say what they're doing. JBL. The PN7 on my Android defaults to AAC, so I assume they prefer that over SBC. The fact that it has defaulted to AAC and it's SBC, well, we can't have everything. SBC on the Motion Boom. And what else we got? They're all Bluetooth 5. Obviously, the Minirig sub is not wireless. You need to have it wired. They all do stereo pairing. USB-C connections on all of them, except for the Minirigs, which have their barrel chargers. So that's a barrel port there, as you can see. All have auxiliary in, except for the Motion Boom, doesn't have an auxiliary. Can all be used as a power bank. You can't use the Minirigs for your phone, and you can't use the JBL Xtreme 3. Again, giving it to you where you don't want it, the JBL Xtreme 3. In terms of power, well, headline specs are 50 watts. Now, I have been plugging their power lead in for them and doing everything I can to make the JBL Xtreme 3 show you what you get for your money. But come on, portable Bluetooth speaker, that's the clue. We want the power going portable. So we wouldn't need to buy a portable speaker if we're just going to plug the lead. It will go a bit louder, but I'm not now, for the foreseeable future, sticking the power lead in when I do my maximum volume test, because it's not really fair on the other speakers that are giving you all the power without having to put the power lead in. So technically 50 watts, probably 40 watts or something thereabouts equivalents on battery. Headline specs 40 watts. So package 80 watts, 30 watts Motion Boom, 30 watts for the PN7. In terms of weight, it's still a lot, even though it's two speakers, you're only talking 1.5 kilos. That's the same weight as the Motion Boom. It's less than the 2 kilos, 2.1 kilos of the PN7. And it's less than the 2 kilos of the JBL Xtreme 3. Just to say, in terms of YouTube latency, Minirig MK3 is by far the best of the bunch. The only one I could really say is usable in terms of lip sync issues. 60 milliseconds, that's a really good result. So, JBL Xtreme 3 versus the Motion Boom.
Tell me what you're waiting.
First thing to remember here is the JBL Xtreme 3, it's in its sweet spot now. It limits bass after 8%. You won't get any more bass. You'll get more mids, you get more highs. You won't get any more bass than you get around the 80% volume. So it's at its sweet spot, whereas the Motion Boom will carry on giving you more bass. It's the speaker that wants to give. So when we compare them, these volumes, remember that. Now, the Motion Boom goes deeper. So at 150 hertz upper bass, we're 3 dB up advantage for the JBL Xtreme 3. They're about the same at 85 hertz. They're about the same at 60 and 50 hertz. But by the time you get to 40 hertz, it's the Motion Boom that's 3 dB up. So upper bass versus deeper bass, and of course I could push that upper bass, but I've already said why I haven't. For now, maybe we will get there eventually. For my personal EQs, I'm not forcing anybody to use them. Now, I would say, at the end of the day, I think there's more quality about the bass. I'm not saying it's hi-fi quality, but you know, it has a very thin bass in terms of the deep bass on the JBL Xtreme 3. It's tuned around 50 Hertz, and at around the 50 Hertz mark, it's quite fat and full and rumbly. It's more rumbly than, even though it's the same and then goes a bit lower on the Motion Boom, it sounds a little bit different on the JBL Xtreme 3. That's the kindest thing I can say to JBL Xtreme 3. Look, bear in mind, I liked this when I first heard it, because at that point we didn't have the Motion Boom. And compared to the Xtreme 2 and the Xtreme 1, it's, for me, more listenable, more high-end, more deep bass, goes a bit louder. So I was, you know, for me it was more listenable. Whereas the JBL 1 and 2, for me, I know a lot of you like the upper bass of the other two speakers. For me, it was more of something I could listen to longer. However, now we've got the Motion Boom, it's making it look a bit silly. You can get most of that out for a £70 speaker rather than the £280 speaker. But that's not to say it doesn't do anything. It does have a big, full, rounded bass around that 50 Hertz mark, and it's a reasonable quality. It's quite a pleasing fat sound, but that's what it does, along with its high-end peak. The overall nature of the JBL Xtreme 3 is brighter than the Motion Boom, but there's a lot of headroom in that EQ to tailor the Motion Boom how you want. So let's put in something that's also around £280 and see if it's any different. £280 for the Mark III, along with its subwoofer against the Motion Boom.
Stop, now you're late for the border. It's cause it's taking you 20 minutes to order. So when it's making you cry, here's my shoulder. You know you treat it like shit, so I told her girl, you know he's better now. If he's mad, don't matter now. Now it's better to help him, cause of you, you're welcome. Now he's mad at you. So dumb, now you do, you're welcome. Girl, I don't mean to be stealing, but I can't help myself. You know I got all these feelings and I can't check myself. Way treating you, that shit was madness. And now you're with me every day, that shit is magic. Whoa. And every time I can see you lying on Instagram, but every day I'll be showing you, girl, just who I am. Now I got a picture of the sad boy, cause he be crying over what he could've had, boy.
Bear in mind, I am playing these on Axis because I like to do it like that. Technically, you go into the app, if you want to play it on Axis, use what they call studio mode in their app, which tames some of that high end. Personally, when I'm playing with a subwoofer, I quite like a bit more clarity. Depends obviously how close you're listening to. So bear in mind, if it sounds a bit sharp to you, that's because that's the tuning really meant for facing up. But I've done it that way because that's how I listen to it. And you can tame that by going into the app. And of course, you could tailor that sound if you want in the app anyway. However, I've left it in default mode. I think it sounds pretty reasonable to default mode. And also bear in mind, you can actually turn that volume up on the subwoofer and balance the volumes between them in the app. You can tinker a lot. This is a quick comparison. I just wanted to give you a quick comparison. And in default mode on Axis, the Minirig clearly 6 decibels up at 160 Hertz, way more upper bass. It's 1 dB up still at 90 Hertz. But the Motion Boom, surprisingly to me, when these volumes are matched, was 8 dB up in terms of real deep bass. So we've got a lot more punch, we've got a lot more definition, we've got a lot more details. You can hear its hi-fi credentials, but if we're talking about low deep bass, which is, that's why you buy the Motion Boom, isn't it? That's going to be the real reason. You're not buying it for the lights because it doesn't have any, and you're not buying it for the detail because you get the Motion Plus. You're buying it for a speaker this size, a speaker this price, amazing, genuine, low, deep bass. And it surprised me how deep it went compared to the Minirig with its sub, which I've happily listened to be honest. I was a bit surprised. But that's matching volumes, and obviously when we go maxing volumes, it may be a little bit different. Okay, let's have a listen to the LG Xboom Go PN7. Bear in mind, you have a DTS mode, which is like a pseudo surround mode. You've got sound boost mode, and you've got the standard mode. Sound boost mode and standard mode on here are both basically plus or minus 5-6 dB. So it's not like one is more unbalanced than the other. I prefer standard modes at lower volumes because you get more lower bass out of it, but you'll find it doesn't go as loud. So I'm going to do both. I'm going to do both sound boost and standard mode against the Motion Boom.
I don't want changes, I just want time. Good food, big smoke, sipping white wine. Even dark roads glow when the light shines. All I need is memories, take the rest sign.
I don't want to leave this dream. I'm inside it for a reason. A reason to live for me. Don't want to leave this house. I don't plan to come down. I want this feeling forever. I don't want to leave this dream. I'm inside it for a reason. A reason to live. Don't want to leave this house. I don't plan to come down. I want this black jeans with a coffee stain on the left side, and my white shirt plain for the 10th time. My shoes got soaked in rain. I'm at a dive bar with the same 5 names where the lines long, and the girls are dive bar with the same 5 names where the lines long, and the girls are dive bar with the same 5 names where the lines long, and the girls are dive bar with the same 5 names where the lines long, and the girls are okay to me.
It's alright, it's all okay. You can plan it, I really thought that I would have it mostly figured out by now. Tired of them bringing me down. It's automatic and it's tragic, cause it matters. Every second that I lose, I wish I could get back to always. Not that it would just feel right. I've been looking my whole life. Don't care if I'm running out of time. I don't wanna waste tonight. I'm waking up and I can't let go. I'm in my head but I can't say no. Not gonna do this all the time. Not gonna focus another moment on the things that I can't control. I need to find some peace of mind tonight. I don't wanna think about it now, nah, nah. I don't wanna think about it now, nah, nah. I'm so tired.
So if I'm comparing Motion Boom and sound boost mode, first of all, I would say the overall nature of the PN7 is quite nice. It's just that it's quite a big speaker, isn't it? But now it's at £120. It puts a different perspective on the value you get. We'll be knocking the handle. Some people like this handle and point out its advantages. I still think it's a bit weird. It could have been a ratchet design. It could have had up and down. However, overall nature, to me, this speaker is quite sparkly and pleasant. It's not a boombox. But there is some detail. It's quite a big sound stage. It is a big speaker, reasonably sized drivers. I would just say it's a nice sound. It's not knocking my shoes. In the same way as the XB43 is a very safe sound, and I can pick it up and know I'm going to have a reasonable listen, but it's never going to, shake my world. I would say that the XB43 does that with an upper bass nature, and this does it with a pleasant, sparkly nature, and that would be the difference between those two speakers, but bear in mind XP43 being a 3 kilo speaker, blinking heavy. Now, sound boost mode, very sparkly. It's got a big 12 kilohertz peak, and that peak is that's huge, 9 decibels up on the Motion Boom. Upper bass 150 hertz, it's 4 dB up on the Motion Boom. They're the same at 85 hertz. But the Motion Boom, again, it's all about the deep bass. And by the time you get to deep bass, 10 decibels. Well, the low bass peak, if you want, is higher than the high bass peak on the PN7. So there's a huge difference in the sound signatures between the two. And if you want a boombox, you're only going to go for the Motion Boom. But if you want a pleasant, sparkly sound, you may well go for the PN7. And as far as standard mode goes, 150 hertz is now only, well, at 150 hertz it's 4 dB up again, but it's only 6 dB down in terms of low bass. The standard mode has more deep bass. You give up deep bass for upper bass punch when you change from standard mode to sound boost mode. You also don't get such a 12-13 kilohertz peak as you do with the sound boost mode when you're in. So it's a more balanced sound, but still within the same frequency response range, if that makes sense, when in standard mode. The standard mode is also quite strong in the mids and the highs compared to the Motion Boom. Just doesn't have the deep bass, but in some ways it has more impact apart from that deep bass. So, you know, it's not, I haven't really revisited since I did the PN7 versus the PL7. Didn't seem to be that much interest. It was a speaker I listened to for quite a while. Obviously, I keep moving on. I'm not a one-man speaker, but, you know, it is a speaker that I think, especially now at £120, is a nice listen. It's not a boombox, though. If you think that's going to be a boombox, it isn't. I think we really need to see what happens, you know, the ultimate headroom and what these speakers are all about and how much bass they can retain and how loud they go when we go to maximum volume.
Que le temps est une simple progression de cause à effet. Mais en vérité, d'un point de vue non linéaire, d'un point de vue non subjectif, c'est plutôt une sorte d'énorme boule où le temps s'enchevêtre comme un méli-mélo très complexe.
I'm always here and there. Oh, I fear of missing out and hate what I've become. And I'm torn. A handshake, a smile, yeah, the blink of an eye. Everything that can change a life in a minute. Ooh, probabilities, which way is made for me? Don't know who I wanna be.
strictly speaking, in terms of loudest, it is the Minirig 1.1. And it's the loudest by some margin. Near 2 decibels louder than the Xtreme 3. 2.5 decibels up on the LG PN7 in sound boost mode, and then followed by the Motion Boom. But there isn't that much between them. The Minirig is out on its own, and then between the Xtreme 3, the sound boost mode on the PN7, and the Motion Boom, there's not a lot. Standard mode on the PN7 is way behind the others. It's obviously quieter. Minirig, by far the loudest, sounds the most dynamic, has the most impact, but surprisingly, doesn't have the most deep bass. In deep bass terms, it goes to, you guessed it, the Motion Boom. Might not be the loudest, but it retains that deep bass by nearly 7 decibels on the PN7 in sound boost mode, and just nicking it from the Xtreme 3 by half a decibel in terms of deep bass. Now, the Minirig might not have the deep bass, but it's certainly the loudest in terms of mid-upper bass, 80 Hz, 160 Hz. It does beat out all the other speakers. Closest to it would be the sound boost mode on the PN7, and Xtreme 3 might be second loudest here, might retain a lot of deep bass. Its problem is, it doesn't retain all its deep bass. It limits at 80%, which makes it sound a little bit screechy, a little bit thin, as we get to maximum volume. Same deep bass, but going louder than the Motion Boom, which makes the Motion Booms, to me, sound a bit more balanced. The high end isn't so hard to listen to as on the Xtreme 3, but the Minirig in 1.1 mode, albeit it's 2 speakers, head and shoulders are the loudest.
Most notable are the two things where one goes loudest. So head and shoulders loudest is the Minirig Mark III in 1.1 mode, same price as the JBL Xtreme 3, and standard mode on the PN7 is, you know, noticeably quieter than all the other speakers. Those are the two standouts. So the Minirig is a 1.1 system. It is 80 watts on paper. You'd hope it goes louder. It certainly does. You're not paying any more than the Xtreme 3, and you're getting aptX. You're getting a lot of impact. But what you're not getting, and it still surprised me, even at these maximum volumes, the one that retains the most deep bass, and I could still push that EQ if I wanted, but I don't want to at the moment, is the Motion Boom, closely followed by the JBL Xtreme 3. Yeah. So even though it limits its bass at 80%, you can see why 70-80% is a sweet spot for the speaker, is because that's where it's at most balanced, and after that it starts to get a bit screechy because it does have a high-end peak and you don't get any more bass after 80%. But to be fair, in terms of the lower deep bass, it's just behind the Motion Boom. But I say, to be fair, £70, £280. I mean, that's being kind. That's not being fair. Whatever mode you're in, PN7 has that pleasant nature, but it doesn't have the deep bass. It's never going to give you that deep bass. Now, I know you can, there is the EQ in the app. I haven't really messed with it. You will note that the bottom slider is 90 Hz. That's not deep bass, and the next slider is 250 Hz. There's not a lot you're going to do in deep bass, but hands up, that's an assumption. I haven't messed with the EQ. I can't mess with the EQ on all these speakers because I also have a life to get on with. And in between the bass of the deep bass of the PN7 and the Xtreme 3, the Motion Boom, that's where you find the subwoofer. Now, again, they've got an app where you could push the bass, and indeed where you juggle with the sounds between the configuration of a subwoofer and a Minirig. You can either rebalance the volumes or push the subwoofer volume up. You can get more out of it. It goes louder, retains a lot of punch, it retains a lot of detail, sounds more hi-fi in nature. Bear in mind, if it sounds a bit sharp to you, I recorded it on Axis because I personally like it that way, and a lot of these speakers have a high-end peak, so shouldn't really make that much difference. However, technically, you want to switch to studio mode, which is the mode Minirig suggests you use for on-axis listening. I didn't put the power lead in. It does go a little bit louder, but it's not really, it's no longer a portable speaker. And at maximum volume, it sounds a bit thin now, a bit shrill, but it does go kind of loud. But don't forget, 50 watts on paper, £280, £70, 30 watts. They're not claiming something they're really not. So, hope you've got a handle on these speakers you've been asking me about, and also I'm interested in. You know, it is impressive. And is this the pound for pound world champion? Probably. I'm thinking what you get in terms of deep end, low, deep, genuine bass on this out trumps the detail
and the sparkle and the whine dispersion of the sound that you get on the Motion Plus. But they are very different sounds. Remember that. You could have both, and it's a different type of listen. You could sometimes I get this is a little bit tiring to me, and I'll switch to the Motion Plus. They are different kinds of speakers, but I think I'm going to declare this pound for pound champion in terms of value, because I'm thinking that the deep bass will please probably a lot more people than the sparkle and the detail that you get on the Motion Plus, and they're around the same price. Obviously, comes in and out of a special offer. But depending on the offer, it's going to be cheap anyway. We know we don't get value from it. No, it's a reasonable speaker, the JBL Xtreme 3. A lot of people are going to like it, but it's not great value. And you're nearly there with the Motion Boom, and you can certainly tweak it. The Minirig, as I don't think you should judge this when I have a standalone comparison, like whether it's a 1.1, 2. Because it's part of, what is it part of, Al? I'm going to show you. It's part of, for me, a 4.2 system. Now, technically, the end game is a 2.2 system. Bear in mind, when you have two Minirigs in stereo and you hook up to a sub, most people go for the 2.1. That sub is only playing one side of that channel. So if you want a true setup of left and right and separated stereo, you do need the 2.2. So the subs pick up each of those channels. You're not going to notice it that much that it's only playing one of the channels. A lot of tracks don't even have stereo in the bass. But the true setup should be 2.2. And I do like adding the Minirig Minis to it, because I find it has a different kind of nature, almost a pseudo surround kind of nature. And if I had those firing up and I have those firing on axis, to me that almost makes a perfect sound, perfect spread of sound, and pretty hi-fi. It's the highest end listen of all the speakers that I've got and I've probably listened to. But look, there's a little bit of fiddling that goes on to do it. But the point being, it's about I can now get on a plane with one of those or two of those in the pocket of my coat, or I could have the 2 large ones goes a bit louder, or I could have 1.1. I've got all the options for all the different scenarios of how I'm going to listen and where I'm going to listen. Then it makes the most sense. They're not the cheapest speakers, but the options you get when you build this modular system, it does seem to trump, for me, it trumps all the others, but maybe I don't listen to it quite as much as I should, because the full system does take some setting up. There is some hassle, but it's the most satisfying listen. It's the most hi-fi type listen of all my portable speakers. That's my overview of where I am currently with the Motion Boom. If there's more speakers you want to hear against that one, let me know. And I hope you enjoyed this particular video. Thank you for watching.